Hello guys, welcome to our another discussion for our online class. In today's video we're discussing about genetic engineering. So from the word itself, you're going to reconstruct or engineer a type of gene. So what is genetic engineering? Genetic engineering is also known as genetically or genetic modification or genetic manipulation. Some others or some people call it GMO or genetically modified organism. It is actually the direct manipulation of an organism's gene using biotechnology. So as you can see on the background, this is actually some scenarios that they are actually doing it. It's also a set of technologies used to change the genetic makeup of the cells. So including the transfer of genes within and across species boundaries to produce improved novel organism. If you have heard this before, novel is actually used also in COVID-19. Novel means this organism is not been recorded ever since. So this is actually a new organism. So that's why the COVID-19 before it's actually called novel coronavirus. So this type of virus was never been recorded before. So in genetic engineering the organism, you're actually creating a new type of organism. So you're actually creating a new type of organism in this system. Examples of a genetically modified organism. Cotton that produces high yield. Next is corn to produce toxins or poisons that kills insects. Next is bacteria to produce medical bacteria. That sounds weird, but we're going to explain that further in our next slides. And last, tomatoes that is frost resistant, meaning it's actually cold resistant. How can you alter an organism's gene? So how can you change it? First, scientists take genes from another organism that shows the desired characteristics. So it's like the selective breeding. You need to select your desired characteristic, and then after selecting the desired characteristic, select the parents of those desired characteristic and so on. So it's same with genetic engineering. So these genes are actually known as foreign genes, and they put these foreign genes into the plants or animals into its cell at a very early stage. After that, as the organisms develop, it will display the characteristics that the foreign gene has. Okay, the foreign genes also develops with it, and now they are actually creating the new type of organism or what we call the novel organism. So this is actually a flounder fish, has a frost resistance, the gene of this flounder fish to the tomato. So that's why we have a frost resistance tomato, as what I have explained earlier. So advantages of GMO. It is much quicker process than selective breeding. Tolerance to insects. So in selective breeding, we just actually need to find this characteristic which takes long. Third one is tolerance to herbicides. So herbicides is actually a type of poison for vegetation or the plants. The desired crop that you want to live will have this tolerance to this poison. So if you apply poisons to your crops, then the undesired grass maybe or vegetation around the crops will die, except for the ones that you genetically modified. Fourth one is the tolerance to heat, cold, and drought. So as like with the tomatoes that we have explained. And finally, these organisms will have higher yields. Disadvantage of GMO. So it causes allergies. So that is actually our body's reaction to foreign organisms that enters our body. So it's actually a defense mechanism of our body. So it can cause allergies or it can cause fever. So when you have the coronavirus, you will have a fever, which actually heats up these viruses or bacteria that you intake, which is very new to your body. So that's why there is a reaction. The reaction is either the allergy or the fever. And they said that it's antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic is a type of drug that doctors use to fight the bacteria. So with this bacteria resistant, the organisms that inside our body cannot be killed by antibiotics, which is not good for our system. So this is actually the disadvantage, one of the disadvantage. And they said that it can cause cancer. Genetically engineered bacteria. It produces useful chemicals, including vaccines and antibiotics. So maybe our doctors or researchers today is using genetically engineered bacteria to create vaccines for COVID-19. And typically the reason for that is they can reproduce quickly. So you can do test runs and trials quickly. So that's the reason why maybe they are using a GMO bacteria for the vaccines of COVID-19. And it produces a large amount of chemicals in a very short time, which is very helpful for us to use genetically modified bacteria to create the vaccines. Example for a GMO bacteria. So bacteria that produces insulin and also, as I have mentioned earlier, can be used for making vaccines for COVID-19. This bacteria, then this insulin is actually a type of sugar that is produced in our body to create a standard sugar level in our body. Otherwise, if it's high or low, then we're going to have health problems in this. So that's why this insulin is very important in our body. So after having insulin, then the doctors will remove the bacteria, leaving behind the useful insulin. So usually the bacteria that produces insulin is what we call the E. coli. And these E. coli bacteria are usually found in the waste of human body. So that ends our discussion in genetically modified organism or genetic engineering. So I hope you have learned something in our discussion. So if you have questions and suggestions, please leave a comment below.